Hello everyone and welcome to part 16 of our F1 22 driver career mode here for Williams in season 2 for the 6th round of the season for the Singapore Grand Prix. Last time out we were in Italy at Monza, where Esteban Ocon had an incredible race to go on and win for Alpine and get himself 25 points in the bag. A very, very dominant performance. If you haven't seen that one, go check it out. In terms of the driver standings, we now sit P9 after finishing P5 ourselves last time. And on 23 points, we're looking quite nice this season for a decent finishing position. Albon sitting down in P13 only on 3 points. He could have potentially gotten points last time out, but unfortunately a mistake from himself meant he was a bit further down the grid. Also Verstappen leading from Leclerc in the driver standings as well. It's still pretty close between those guys. And as we head into this weekend, Ferrari still the top team in the pecking order. Red Bull have closed the gap a little bit. And in terms of ourselves, we have jumped AlphaTauri and Haas once again. We're in a bit of a battle with these guys in terms of car performance at the moment, and we jump back ahead of them to be the 4th to bottom team. So pretty much right in the mid-pack. The mid-pack is very, very close, closer than it's ever been heading into the Singapore Grand Prix this time out, which could cause an interesting race because it's not the easiest track to overtake on, obviously being a street circuit. And anything can happen around here really. It's very easy to make a mistake and to maybe just slightly brush a wall and get a bit of damage. So qualifying very important around here. Also important to make sure you make the most of every opportunity and get ahead of as many cars as you possibly can, obviously, especially for us in our position where we are fighting for points in the midfield to try and get as good a finishing position as possible. But let's go into the grid rundown now for the Singapore Grand Prix.
It's time to take a look at our starting grid for today's race. Charles Leclerc lines up on pole position, and the smooth operator Carlos Sainz completes the front row. As we continue through the rest of the grid today, we have Norris, Russell, and Sir Lewis Hamilton, and Perez, Verstappen, Fernando Alonso, Ocon, and Benjamin, Albon, Magnussen, Pierre Gasly, and Joe, Tsunoda, Mick Schumacher, Sebastian Vettel, and Daniel Ricciardo. They've taken a grid penalty. Latifi and Lance Stroll brings the grid to a close. Now it's almost time for lights out, so let's go down to the track.
Okay, now that we've got some good points on the board, let's continue this form and aim for another top 10 finish.
So here we are sitting on the grid for the Singapore Grand Prix, lining up in P10. So really good qualifying for ourselves to get in the top half of the grid, and hopefully we can transfer that pace into the Grand Prix itself and actually get ourselves some more points, following on from our good form from the last 2 rounds, getting a P4 and then a P5 last time out as well. So a really good consistent run so far, and this is a really good qualifying as well to try and continue that good streak. Singapore is a track, I wouldn't say I'm great at it, but it's certainly just sort of like a mid-tier track for me. It's not my worst, not my best. It's just a track that I can sort of do. So let's see if we are able to try and get the better side of that heading into this one, I guess. We just got to try and focus on getting a good launch off the line. We have Albon and Magnussen just behind us starting on the soft, so I'd be expecting those guys to get the jump on us, but hopefully we don't lose any more than that. It's 5 lights out and we are underway for the Singapore Grand Prix, and straight away Magnussen and Albon coming up on our outside here as we head down towards turn 1, just having to back out of it in the end there. You can see I try to keep it down the inside, but getting over that inside curb, losing balance on the car there, and so Albon and Magnussen both through. We're down to P12 defending from Yuki Tsunoda in the AlphaTauri, trying to go around our outside. We're going to try and get the run out of the corner, which we do, and we get ourselves back ahead of the AlphaTauri. Actually, Tsunoda gets his nose back down the inside there, but in the end we were able to sweep around the outside, get ourselves back into P12, so we're outside of the points for now, but it was only to those 2 soft running cars, so not a shocking start to be honest. Sainz, however, was on the front row. He's now battling to try and stay in P6 ahead of Max Verstappen. He started on the hard compound tyres, so he's at even more of a disadvantage than we were off the start of the Grand Prix. Verstappen adamant, trying to get through on the Ferrari there, but in the end has to tuck back in behind. And actually, no, he doesn't. I thought he was. He sticks his nose back in there. Sainz has to go around the outside of the Singapore sling, and in the end isn't able to hold it, so Verstappen does get the move done there. Sainz back to P7. Alonso fighting away with Magnussen, I believe that is, and Magnussen does get the better of the Alpine there to get himself into P8, so a good start for Kevin. I believe he started down in P12 it was, and he's now finds himself in P8. So a good start for him on those soft compound tyres. Meanwhile, for ourselves, we're back down to P12, losing out to those two soft running cars, as I just said before. Meanwhile, up ahead, it's Lando Norris in the McLaren leading the way for McLaren. He started in third, so he's had an incredible start to get ahead of Sainz and Charles Leclerc, and he's had such a good season this in Season 2 here, and yeah, he's just on some real good form. If McLaren can get a good car built around him, he could absolutely go on to win a championship with the current form that he's shown. So here we are looking at a replay of the race start. He immediately gets ahead of Sainz, obviously with Sainz on the hard compound tyres, and then he just sends it around the outside of Charles Leclerc through turn 1, 2, 3 complex here. You'll have the outside for turn 3, and that will get him the better exit out of the corner there. You can see he's able to get his nose in ahead of the Ferrari. So just a real good proper start there from Lando, showing the kind of material that he's made of. And we'll have an off-board shot here on the TV cams of that race start as well, just to have a look at this battle up the front. But you can see Lando already ahead of Sainz, and then Sainz just making a mistake on his own there into the braking zone, locking up on cold hard tyres, losing out to both Mercedes and Perez, and then obviously, as we saw, he ends up losing out to Verstappen a little later on as well. So we go for an order check now, heading on to lap number 3. Lando still leads the way by about 9/10 over Charles Leclerc. So Leclerc's not even got like massive pace over him either. Lando doing very, very well here at the start of the Singapore Grand Prix. It's then Russell in P3 ahead of his teammate Lewis Hamilton in P4. So the Mercedes guys looking to have one of their better runs of the season here in Singapore, ahead of Sergio Perez in P5, and then the other Red Bull of Verstappen in P6 after getting himself ahead of Sainz. He lost a bit of time in that battle, so he's looking to close in on his teammate. Then there is Sainz in P7, being chased down by Kevin Magnussen in the Haas, doing very well for himself here on those soft compound tyres. It'll be interesting to see if he has to do an extra pit stop though on those tyres. We'll just have to wait and see how the race plays out for these guys. But in P8, can't be too displeased with that for now. Kevin Magnussen, Fernando Alonso in P9 for Alpine, and then the other Alpine of Ocon rounding out the points there in P10, just ahead of our teammate Albon, and then ourselves in 12th, just behind Albon. Those soft tyres are already seeming to sort of wear off a bit. You can see we're still all over the back of Albon as we now cut just a lap later here on, well, not even a lap later, just to the end of lap 3, really, the start of lap 4. Albon has a poor run out of the penultimate corner, and so we're going to be all over the back of our teammate as we now head into the final corner, the very fast sweeping corner. So it's good to have good tyres through there. You can see we stay all over the back of our teammate, even with the dirty air. We fake to the inside, go to the outside under the braking zone, round the outside of turn 1, inside of turn 2, and we do get the move done there as we go into turn 3. So clearly the softs not lasting that long around this track. You can see up ahead Magnussen actually starting to hold up Fernando Alonso as well. So absolutely those softs really don't last around here as we now cut to lap 7, so just a few laps later. And you can see we're all just sort of getting bunched up into this little train now with Magnussen holding everyone up. And we've got a 4.5 second gap to our teammate just behind. But that has allowed me to now close up to the Alpine of Esteban Ocon as we head on to lap number 8. Not able to get the move done in turn 1 there, but we are going to try and set up a move on the exit of the hairpin here about halfway through lap 8. And we get the DRS. He's just about outside of DRS range of his teammate, so we're going to look to the outside of the Alpine. Can we get the move done there of the man that won last time out in Monza? And we do get ourselves into P9. Ocon not seeming to bring that form through from Italy, unfortunately enough for him. But as we now cut to lap 12, not a whole lot happening in this Grand Prix at this point with anyone else. It's just really us sort of slowly making moves every 4 laps or so, and we close in on Alonso. Alonso almost runs into us there on that curb, and we do get the move done around the outside though to get ourselves into P8 now. It's an 8-second gap to Carlos Sainz up ahead, and it's Carlos Sainz, so I doubt we'll be able to close that gap in as we look a bit up ahead on the same lap here on lap 12, and it's Lewis Hamilton coming in to the pit lane, and he's the only front runner actually coming into the pit lane here, so an early stop there for Lewis. We are supposed to come in on lap 13 here, so it's not like he's made a super early unscheduled stop. It just seems that maybe he used up a bit more of his tyres than he would have liked at the opening stages of this race. However, we now find ourselves under attack from Fernando Alonso once again here on lap 13. We go for the crisscross. This is where we made the move just a lap ago on the Alpine, so he's coming back at us. We have the outside line here, which will give us the inside for the next corner, but Alonso just turns in across us there. I have to back out to make sure we don't make contact, and so for now Alonso holds on to P7 with that very aggressive maneuver there in the end, and we drop down to P8, and we just have to try and look for another opportunity to get back ahead of the Alpine. But now here we go on end of lap 13 onto lap 14. It's George Russell versus Sergio Perez. He's going to look to the inside of turn 1 on the Mercedes to get that final podium position. He's going to get the move, not quite. Russell has the inside for turn 2, you'll have the outside for turn 3, and normally you're able to get the better traction and the better run out of the corner, and he does do that and keep it ahead of the Mexican for now, but Perez will be right behind the Brit and will have DRS and Slipstream, and I'm sure he'll deploy any battery that he's got as well to try and get ahead of the youngster here. He's going to go to the inside where we've made the move on Alonso just a couple laps ago. Is he going to get the move done? Not quite. There's a little bit of wheel banging between them, but Russell with the outside line again able to have the better run out of the corner, hold on to P3 for now, so very good defensive driving there from George Russell, and that's backed those guys up into a bit of a four-way battle. Meanwhile here on the end of lap 14, a bit of a mistake from Alonso, and he comes into the pit lane there. We're going to go on for one more lap here, and there's a couple people in the pit lane. You can see Russell, Verstappen, Charles Leclerc also in the pit lane here, and so the pit stops seem to be a bit more spread out between everyone. Normally you'll have one half of the field coming in one lap and then the other half coming in the next lap, but this has been spread out over a few different laps. As you can see now at the end of lap 15 on the 16, these guys have pit. We just saw before Russell and Verstappen now trying to get ahead of George Russell, and his teammate wasn't able to get this move done before, and Russell's going to try and make sure the same thing happens here. Perez does get ahead there, so he was able to do a bit of an overcut and get ahead of George Russell, and then Verstappen is able to get it done on track, so Russell does in the end lose out the position to both of the Red Bulls. It'll be interesting to see now who has the better pace between these two guys. Verstappen chasing down his teammate, or maybe Perez on some slightly fresher tyres. You can see Albon in P9 though, and Alonso in P10. It's ourselves down in P11, so with that undercut from Albon, obviously he had to pit a bit earlier off those soft compound tyres, has actually really worked out for him there, and he's gotten ahead of us.
I don't think we're far away from rain now. I'll keep you updated as conditions change.
And that's not what we really want to hear. The weather indicator at the start of the race said there was meant to be some rain right towards the end of the Grand Prix. But now Mark here, right after our pit stop, has said that the rain's going to be soon. And on that same lap 16, the rain has started coming down. Mark says that he thinks we should stay on the slick tyres for now. So we're going to continue on for another lap. Everyone ahead of us has also continued, and so does Ocon. However, I don't think that was the right decision, because then the cars just behind, Pierre Gasly, Daniel Ricciardo, Yuki Tsunoda, every car behind us is going to come into the pit lane. So I think we just missed the crossover period, and we're going to have to do an entire lap on slicks while the guys behind are on inters. And you can see, there you go, the FIA disables DRS. So that's a bit of a shame that we've really missed the gun. And just look how wet it is here on the same lap 17, how slow we're having to go, and that is just so annoying. We could have made a whole bunch of ground if we had to just come into the pit lane there, but I trusted Mark, our engineer, to stay on the intermediates, and it looks like that was the wrong call. Everyone ahead coming in. Carlos Sainz, this is a big one. Carlos Sainz hadn't made his first pit stop because he started on those hard compound tyres, and so now he's just got a complete free pit stop here. Carlos Sainz is going to lead the way for Ferrari because he didn't do that first initial pit stop to go from dry tyres to dry tyres, and Max Verstappen, for whatever reason, I guess didn't want to double stack with Perez, has continued on. He's going to lose a ridiculous amount of time. He's going to lose a lot more time than he would have just double stacking, and so that is a massive blunder there from Red Bull. And for the current championship leader, Carlos Sainz leading the way, still ahead of Verstappen. That's how much of a gap he's got by not having to make that pit stop. But as you can see, everyone coming in for intermediates, and we're going to have lost so much time to those guys behind, having to do this whole lap on a wet track on slick tyres. Luckily, Ocon deciding to stay out means that we at least don't lose the position to him. And yeah, hopefully the pit crew can get the pit stop done quickly enough. Here comes the Alpine that we do just about get out ahead of the former race winner. It's really interesting to see how good his form was in Monza last time out, and now here we are battling away with him outside of the points. But you can see we are going to lose out. Ricciardo, Gasly have already gone past, and Schumacher also just about getting himself ahead of us there in the Haas. And so we are now right down in P14, an actual legitimate P14 here, looking further up ahead though. Verstappen really struggling, as you would expect, on this wet track, and so Leclerc has caught up to him, easily gets around him in the traction zone there to get himself into P2, so it's a 1-2 for Ferrari now, and now it's Lando Norris, who unfortunately because of this rain has been a bit screwed over with his position. He was leading the way the entire way up to the rain period, but he now finds himself down in P3. Verstappen though, running a bit wide, runs into Lewis Hamilton, so Hamilton with an undercut actually got ahead of his teammate there and found himself in what would have been P4, and he's going to now end up retiring from the race because Max Verstappen, slick tyres on a wet track just doesn't work, has run into Lewis Hamilton, and that is the Mercedes gone out of the race. Hamilton has had such a shocker of the last 2 seasons of this career mode, Season 1 and now in Season 2. Hasn't won a race the entire way through, has had so many retirements and non-point scoring races, and wow, that is just so unlucky, such a shame there for the 7-time champion. He's just not having a good time in that Mercedes at the moment, and that is going to give everyone from P5 downwards a free position up the grid, so we'll absolutely take that. But yeah, just such a huge shame there for Lewis Hamilton, and Verstappen does exit the pit lane in P9, so he has lost an incredible amount of time, considering he was up fighting for around the podium positions just a little bit earlier on. Interesting to see that he is actually still in the points. I thought he was going to be way down and out, but no, he is still in the points-paying position. So here we go with an order check on lap 20 now. It's Carlos Sainz leading the way for Ferrari. He's had such bad luck in previous races this season. I believe he's won 2 races earlier on in the season. He could have potentially won in Monza last time out, but then made a mistake and then got screwed over with the safety car. So he has had lots of pace, just some real bad luck as he leads the way ahead of his teammate by 15.5 seconds. Charles Leclerc is behind his teammate in second place. It's then Lando Norris in P3. Everyone is very, very spread out, you'll notice, at this stage of the race. There is barely any races between any cars. There's a 3-second gap to Charles Leclerc and a 10-second gap to Sergio Perez for Lando Norris. Then it's Sergio Perez who's got pretty much 3 to 4 seconds either side of him as well in P4. Then George Russell down in P5, also with a massive gap around him. Everyone just in completely clean, fresh air, and so nothing super really exciting happening at this stage of the Grand Prix. Magnussen is in P6, so starting on the soft compound tyres actually worked out for the Haas guys there, because in the end, everyone had to pit onto a set of intermediates anyway, so he finds himself in P6. Albon doing very, very well for himself to be in P7, looking to get his best point scoring position of our career mode so far. Alonso in P8, just behind him, chasing him down. Verstappen in P9 will be very hungry to chase down as many cars as he can. Daniel Ricciardo for McLaren rounding out the points paying positions in P10. Then you got Gasly, Schumacher 11th and 12th, and then here's ourselves right down in P13 when we were looking to get some decent points earlier on in the race. We are all over the back of Schumacher now, just struggling to get close enough to actually go for a move on the Haas. I'm able to get close in the mid-corner, but I just can't get the power down, and I can't get the traction that I need to actually go for a move. However, here on lap 22, Schumacher makes a mistake on his own there under the pressure, and that allows us to nip down the inside, and we do get the move done. He tries to stick his nose down the inside of the hairpin here, but in the end we're able to just get the power down now that we're ahead and got the better line through the corner. That is us into P12, and you can see just a little bit later on lap 22 trying to pull a gap on the Haas and close in on Pierre Gasly, but Schumacher with a crazy dive in the hairpin hits our car. That move was never on. He was half a second back. That was never going to happen. We're going to have to look at a replay of that because that was absolutely ridiculous. I'm very surprised he didn't get any damage. Here he is just behind us. You can see we go for the racing line, and he locks up both front tyres, slams into the side of our car. We get the better exit out of the corner because we're on the outside line, and so we hold on to position for now, and he has to tuck back in. But what a crazy dive that was from the Haas. That shows a lot of bravery as we now cut to lap 26. We've got 6.5 seconds to Schumacher behind, and we have closed right in to Gasly ahead, and that just sort of shows the pace difference and how hard it is to overtake. And Gasly with an engine failure, we get completely blinded. It's hard enough to see with how heavy it's raining at the moment, let alone having all this billowing smoke come straight into our screen as he has to pull over to the side, and he will obviously be retiring from the Grand Prix. The Red Bull powertrains have been really unreliable this season. They certainly seem to have been the quickest power unit available, but they also seem to be very unreliable over the course of this season. That does cause a virtual safety car, which in the end doesn't really mean anything. We're not going to catch anyone ahead of us. No one behind us is going to catch us because of this. All it really means is probably about half a lap of just going slow and getting a bit of a breather. But as we cut to the end of the lap here, look how heavy it is raining. This has to be full heavy wet conditions. And because of that, as we saw in China with the sort of changing of conditions, the AI is very, very overpowered like this, and so Schumacher and Ocon have closed in that 7-second gap we've got, and they are hassling us the entire way through this final sector, trying to get this P11 off of us. It's all for pride, really. P11 and downwards obviously doesn't get you any points, but as I said, it's all really for pride as we head through the final corner in the end, and it's going to be more of a case of what could have been here for the Singapore Grand Prix.
Okay,
endured the harsh conditions here in Singapore then to pull off a spectacular win. So Natalie, what do you think helped them deliver this result?
Keeping the tyre temperatures up in the tricky wet conditions was really important. There's not much grip at the best of times anyway, and that's 10 times worse if you're on cold tyres. So the way they kept the rubber in its proper operating window was a big advantage today.
Looking at the podium, you can see that red suit familiar to fans across the globe. A world-class win for a world-class team. Ferrari do it again.
So here we are with the results for the Singapore Grand Prix. Carlos Sainz winning the race by 10.5 seconds over his teammate Charles Leclerc. So it's a 1-2 for Ferrari after their disappointment last time out in Monza, where Leclerc obviously lost the lead and the win of the race in the last lap and a half. It's then Lando Norris doing very well for himself in P3. I reckon he could have won if it had stayed dry for the rest of the Grand Prix, because his pace was very good, holding it ahead of Charles Leclerc, and Albon doing very, very well for himself in P7. Ourselves, unfortunately, down in P11, so no points for us. Leclerc takes the lead of the Drivers' World Championship here in Singapore by 4 points over Max Verstappen. Sainz finds himself in P3, so it's a very close fight between those three guys heading into the last half of the season. Ourselves, we still sit in P9 with a massive gap to Esteban knock on ahead of us. I doubt we'll be able to close that. Albon getting himself some more points, sits in P14. Look, Ferrari still leading the way. They extend their margin over Red Bull by quite a bit. McLaren jump Alpine to go to P4 and Alpine down to P5. Ourselves, we stay in P6, doubling now our gap to AlphaTauri, 32 points to 16, so that's really good for ourselves. And a bit of news at the end of the Singapore Grand Prix. Here's Sebastian Vettel will be retiring from the sport, leaving Aston Martin and the entire grid once this season is over. So it'll be a bit of a shame to see the four-time world champion leave the sport. And yeah, I guess that means we will see some sort of driver transfers heading into Season 3. But guys, that is all for this video. We'll be heading to Coda in the USA for the next one. If you did enjoy, make sure to leave a like and subscribe if you want to see more content like this in the future. And I'll see you all in the next one. Goodbye.